when we talk about the greats of English football, some of the names that come to mind would be Roy Keane, it would be Beardsley, Barnes, Best, Shearer, and tonight's guest is up there with the best of them, and many would describe him as the most naturally gifted footballer of them all. Affectionately known as Le God by his adoring Saints fans, he was a staple on our Saturday nights throughout the 1990s. On Match of the Day, he was a regular goal of the month and goal of the season winner. Considered a maverick, he was a one-man club and he had 540 appearances, scoring 209 goals over a 16-year period, and that was all from the midfield. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real honour to introduce to you the man himself, Matthew LeTissier.
What was that music?
You recognise that music only too well. Hello, good to see you. Welcome.
Good
welcome
to see you,
Ireland.
mate. Thank you for inviting me over.
Yeah, it's good that you're here. Now, the last time I saw you in Ireland was in 1995. I was in Lansdowne in the stands.
Were you really?
And I was, yeah.
Wow.
I was in the stands.
You don't look that old.
Yeah, well, I was 15, and they actually, funnily enough, gave me one of those jerseys as one of the what do they call them? The people who look after the
stewards.
I was one of the stewards. I took that jersey off fast. There was a riot.
You're not wrong.
England were playing Ireland, and there was a riot. So
I was playing in that game. Yes.
So, what was that experience like?
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite scary. Yeah, I mean, we thought kind of by the mid-90s football violence had kind of died out a little bit, and that was kind of the first time I'd really experienced anything quite like that. It was devastating for me because it was only my second ever start for England, and it was billed as a big chance for me to play my way into the team. And as it turned out, 27 minutes into the game, we're 1-0 down. I've barely had a kick of the ball, and crowd trouble starts and the game gets abandoned. So that was my second cap, and I must have been really shit for that 27 minutes because the next time the squad was announced, I wasn't even in it.
And do you know, there's a few people who tried to get tonight cancelled.
There's a surprise.
So do you think that you're the common denominator here? For
Yeah. I do have some good memories of Dublin, though. My current Mrs. LeTissier, I proposed to her at the K Club.
Oh, very fancy. Oh.
So there you go, see? A slightly better memory of Dublin than the previous one.
How did you do that? Did you propose before the game of golf? After the game of golf?
I think it was after.
And you're still together?
We are, 16 years later.
And you have a daughter?
And we have a 15-year-old daughter, yeah.
Does she ever heckle you like my daughter just did?
She would do if she was here.
Right,
yeah,
good.
She's a bit leery.
You're from Guernsey and you played football for England. But Guernsey isn't really England.
No.
So I suppose my question is, would you not have just played for Ireland? we would have won the World Cup.
Wow. I didn't qualify for Ireland.
Oh, we would have found some relative.
To be fair, if Tony Cascarino can play for you, anyone can. But I did because I was born in Guernsey. I qualified for any of the home nations, so I could have gone Wales and Scotland, Northern Ireland. I've played a few times for England in 1994-95, and they were because England had already qualified for Euro '96. We only played friendlies leading up to that tournament. So because I'd only played international friendlies, it meant that I could still change allegiance to another country. And Wales, Bobby Gould was manager of Wales. It's absolutely true. You won't believe this. Bobby Gould went in the papers going, we'd like Matt LeTissier to come and play for Wales, right? So the reporter who he'd spoken to rang me up. And he said, Matt, did you see what Bobby Gould said about you about playing for Wales? Right, now, I grew up as a kid. I always supported all the home nations, but I wanted to play for England, right? That was my ambition in life. And so the guy asked me the question. I went, no, I said, no interest in playing for Wales. Not interested at all. I only want to play for England, right? So that's all fine. So that goes in the papers. And I kid you not, about 3 days later, the draw for the fourth round of the Carling Cup gets taken place, and Southampton get drawn Cardiff away. Fucking hell. How much... I mean, if you think I've got abuse the last 4 years, right? The abuse I got on Ninian Park that night was something else. Honestly, every time the ball came anywhere near me, I was heckled like you wouldn't believe. Luckily, we won the game 3-0 and I scored 2. So I had the last laugh. But to be fair to him, at the end of the game, right? Because I didn't take things personally. You might have noticed I've got quite a thick skin over the last few years, and I don't take things personally. So at the end of the game, I just went up to them where they were all heckling me from behind the goal, and I went up after the game and I applauded them. And to be fair to them, they clapped me back once I'd scored the goal. So it was a nice end to the evening after being abused for 90 minutes.
Well, maybe that's where you learn to take the heat, you take the abuse.
Probably.
Because it's not that easy, having thousands of people on Twitter calling you names every 10 minutes. But before we get to there, come here, England, they're playing in Europe. Go on, tell us. Yeah.
I've had to watch. Luckily, I mean, I've been very fortunate because I've actually been paid to watch those 3 games.
You'd need to be.
I've had some jobs in fan parks, and honestly, if I'd have not been paid to watch those 3 games, I would have been really, really disappointed.
What's wrong?
Honestly.
So many great players. Why are they so awful?
It's a good question. Personally, I feel like we don't have a manager who inspires players to want to play their best. I don't think we've got a manager with enough charisma. I think he's probably the biggest problem. I think the fact that we've got world-class... I mean, we've got Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka. Those 4 players alone must have scored over 100 goals between them this season. Probably way over 100. And yet in 3 group games, we've just scored 2 goals and had very few shots on target. We haven't even looked like, prizing open defences and creating chances all over the place. So those players can do it for their clubs. So the common denominator has to be that their manager can't be that great. And I've realised that for a long time. I think he's been very lucky in what he's achieved as England manager, if I'm honest.
Well, you're not going to get called up this time either. Come here, you played for Southampton for 16 years and you could have gone to Spurs, who I supported as a kid. You could have gone to Chelsea.
So did I.
You would have got paid significantly more.
Yeah.
But you stayed loyal to a relatively small but very respected club. Where did this loyalty come from?
I don't know. I think because I, as a kid growing up in Guernsey, right, I can remember being about 8 years old, and all I wanted to do was be a professional footballer and play for England. Right, that was my 2 lifetime ambitions, and by the age of 25, I'd managed to do that, and Southampton Football Club had been the ones that had facilitated that for me. So I always felt like I owed Southampton Football Club something, first and foremost. The fans at Southampton were always brilliant to me. Ever since I was a kid, at 17 years of age, sitting on the subs bench, they were always chanting for me to get on. They were putting pressure on the manager to get me on the pitch. Right, and they were brilliant to me. So I had that affinity with the fans at Southampton. I did get close to joining Spurs, which was my boyhood team, and they were the only team that I spoke to, and I was very close to joining them. The only reason I didn't, in the end, was because I was just about to get married, and my first wife at the time, she was my fiancée. We were just about to get married, and she didn't want to go live in London. So I had a choice to make. I either got married or I joined Spurs, and I got married and was divorced 6 years later. So. But as I said, to this day, I made that decision, and to this day, I don't have a single regret about spending my entire career at Southampton. Not one.
So you would be absolutely loaded now. You would have got 5 times the amount of Chelsea. No regrets at all. Not even
I wouldn't have had to come to Dublin for 100 quid, would I?
100 quid? You'd be lucky. Yeah, I'll pay you cash on the night.
Flights are expensive these days.
Yeah, well, I've heard you say before that your aim was to entertain with football.
I've always believed that football was an entertainment industry first and foremost. The whole winning side of things. I mean, I know it's nice and all that, but I grew up on a tiny island where the standard of football wasn't that great. Basically, any team that I played for won the league. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't think I played a whole season in a team where I didn't win the league, because there wasn't. So I won. I got bored of winning basically when I was a kid, and so when I got to Southampton, I was like, "Oh, this is right. I'm not winning every week." But no, I honestly, for me, I wanted people to leave that football stadium having seen something that made them go, "Oh, I don't see that very often. How did he do that? That for me was what football was all about. I loved watching football and seeing players do something a little bit different. I hate watching football when they go sideways, 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 lose the ball. Fuck. Try and do something a little bit different that's going to disrupt the opposition. And that's what my job was in the team. I had to try to disrupt the opposition. And so I did that by shooting from places where some people wouldn't even dream of shooting from. I did that by seeing passes that other people didn't see or couldn't see. And I got a huge amount of pleasure out of putting a smile on people's faces when they leave the football stadium.
Well, you definitely did that. I was never a massive football fan, but I always knew, what's he going to do now? Scoring goals from so far. And I saw you do today as well. There was a little kid outside with a football, and I saw how happy he was when he got you signed. I presume you signed the football or signed something.
I did sign a football for him. Yeah, it's
the,
lovely. I mean, obviously he was an embryo when I was playing, but thank God for YouTube. That's what I say.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite got round to censoring my goals yet. I'm sure it won't be long. 2030.
All of a sudden, all your goals just go terribly wide.
Yeah.
They called you Le God, the Saints fans. That's quite a title, and you must have had years of being sort of worshipped or put on a pedestal. What was that feeling like?
It's pretty cool to have people, a whole stadium kind of chanting your name, and when I used to go over and take the corners, they used to do this bowing thing. When I went, I was like, what's that? What's all that about? So I mean, obviously it's quite amazing to have that amount of people who think so highly of you that they kind of want to do that stuff for you and chant your name and everything, and it's brilliant. I even 30 years, 22 years later after I've retired, I went down to St Mary's for the second leg of the playoff final against West Brom, and I did an interview on the pitch at half time, and the reception that I got all these years later was still amazing. So that was one of the reasons why I stayed at Southampton, because those fans have always been brilliant to me.
You went from there and you were a pundit, and you were on Soccer Saturday, which is 4 lads staring at a screen. It doesn't sound like it would work. It sounds pretty boring, but it looked like a lot of fun. It looked like you liked each other. You made it fun. Was it? Or were you just acting?
I've been really, really lucky in my adult life, in my working life. I've never got up in the morning and actually felt like I was going to work. And that's what it felt like when I woke up to go to work on Soccer Saturday every Saturday morning. Never felt like it was going to work. It was just me going out, sitting in the studio with my mates, having a chat about football. And we built up a great rapport on the show. We were there for quite a number of years together. I think people appreciated our honesty. They could see that we were still passionate about football, and we loved our own teams. And Phil Thompson could be very biased towards his one on occasions, but the rest of us tried to be a bit balanced in our views on our teams, and it worked. For whatever reason, well, I think we know what reason it was in 2020. For whatever reason, Sky decided that it wasn't for them, and they were going to take it down a different route, and decided to.
Would you not have just done what you were told?
Disband. To be honest, right? I mean, I know I was kind of outspoken against the media and against my own employers, but I felt like it was too important an issue not to be outspoken about it, because what was going on in 2020 was not right, and I stand by that to this day. And I wouldn't do anything differently, even though I knew I was getting sacked. It was too important to me. So I felt, even though, looking back, I gave them a reason to sack me. I actually think, looking back now, because of the way the company's gone, I think I'd have probably got sacked anyway, even if I hadn't have been outspoken. Because Charlie Nicholas never said anything bad, Phil Thompson never said anything bad, and the three of us went all on the same day. So, I think because of the DEI stuff, the diversity, equity and inclusion stuff that came into Sky when it was bought by the Americans. Comcast, exactly right. Because of that stuff, looking back now, I think I would have gone anyway, because it wasn't a good look for them to have 5 middle-aged white men on a television program on a Saturday afternoon. because that's not the look there that they were going for. I mean, it sounds mad, but I thought it's the truth. And, I'm afraid people sometimes over the last few years have been afraid to speak the truth because of the consequences of that. And I think that's one of the most insidious things that we've had over the last few years, is that people have been self-censoring because they don't want to get into trouble. They don't want to say the wrong thing in case they lose their job, like me. But I think it's a really dangerous way to go. Self-censorship is one of the worst censorship you could have, really.
I suppose it's coming from fear. And I'm guessing a lot of people would be afraid to take some of the heat that you've taken. I've had a small taste of it. I mean, I've seen your X page, but I've also had people email me. Sometimes it's just a one-word insult. I couldn't tell if it was about you or me.
It's probably me.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's fine.
And
give it to me. I can take it.
And some guy rang this venue and chewed the ear off the manager for 20 minutes. And there's been a few emails. Mostly we just pass the emails to each other and laugh about it when this happens. But you get called names such as tinfoil hat wear, conspiracy theorist. What else? Does it have an effect on you? And
no.
If so, no.
I think I got over the name calling when I was about 14 in secondary school. when you've got a nose this big in school, right, you get used to the name calling. So by the time I was 14, I was like, got called every name under the sun. I was like, and my dad was brilliant, actually. I remember my dad when I was growing up, because I've got my dad's nose, unfortunately, right? And he always used to say to me, because he knew I was getting the piss taken out of me at school, he just went, just remember, son, big nose, it's a sign of character. And I was like that. Cheers, Dad, that'll do me. I'll cling on to that for the next 55 years.
Yeah. Well, you're quite the character, all right. So you've gone from being le god, right, worshipped, people putting you on a pedestal, then to people attacking you, which is kind of the opposite.
Yeah. There was I can't remember who it was that said it. It was I think it might be Rudyard Kipling about the highs and lows, and take them both. If you can, come on, one of you must know. If you can talk with kings or lose the common touch, if you can, talk to the crowds and keep your virtue. Yeah. Anyway, I look really intelligent right now. Let's get this. It was the poem if, but it was, and it just meant when the highs are there, you don't get too high, because you know the lows will come at some point. You don't get too low. And I'm the youngest of 4 boys in my family, right? So I had a really close family back in Guernsey. I still to this day. In fact, next Friday, my mum turns 80, July the 7th. On July the 5th, me and my 3 older brothers and our partners are flying my mum and dad out to Tenerife, and we're all staying in a villa, the 10 of us, to celebrate my mum's 80th birthday. So, like, me and my brothers have always been like that. So having had 3 older brothers, there was no way that I could get too big for my boots. There's not a chance, because they were keeping my feet on the ground when I was a kid, and they would still do that when I was an adult. And I've got so much respect for my big brothers and my mum and dad. I couldn't ever. So I've never forgotten my roots. In fact, I'll probably end up going back and living in Guernsey at some point, if I can convince the current Mrs. LeTissier. Because my mum and dad are 80 now, and I want to spend a bit more time with them. You never know how long they're going to have left, bless them. But they're in good health, by the way, so hopefully it's quite a few years. I've always kind of been. I never got too high, and I never got too low. I never got too big for my boots. I knew my place. I knew that I was good at football, but I also knew that I'm just a little kid from Guernsey.
What I've learned from you so far, you're a family man. You played football to entertain. You weren't tempted by money. When people put you down, you're like, eh. And when they lifted you up, you go, eh. That all sounds like there's some sort of spiritual core to it. Like you've got something there. Have you got like some belief or practice?
I have a belief. I've only recently. I became a Christian last year. But I've always kind of known, but I was just too busy doing everything else in my life.
Too busy being God.
Oh yeah. But I think what kind of clarified it all for me was this last few years. Really, it's been a real eye opener with what's going on in the world, and I really, truly, honestly believe in my heart that we are in a massive fight of good against evil, 100%. And I want to be on the right side of history, and I want to be on the good side, and I feel like that's what I've done.
Beautiful. I'm not surprised. I did see that a lot around Ireland during those dark times. I saw a lot of people that had a spirit within them. And it was kind of amazing that they couldn't be bought, or they just weren't falling for it. They knew. They just knew. They had an inner knowledge and a strength.
Actually, I was having a conversation with Colin in the pub across the road actually just now about what was it about the people that could see the bullshit early on. What did they all have in common? And it's a question that I've been kind of mulling over for the last few years and trying to come up with. And I've spoken to people. And one of the things that kind of resonates with people is, as a kid, a lot of the people that I know who were awake were a little bit rebellious. They had a little bit of a streak about them which didn't automatically defer to somebody in authority. So it's about being able to, I think it's about being able to listen to your gut and what is right, and then being able to verbalise that and question it to somebody who's trying to tell you something different, who's in a position of authority. And I've always had that as a kid. I remember as a kid, I was about 11, right? I was playing in a school football match. We were playing away from home, so the opposition's PE teacher was refereeing the football match, right? And he was cheating, right? And I'm not having that, right? I'm like, I need fairness in my life. So I'm a Libran, right? So I need balance in my life. I need things to be fair. There's a lot of people nodding who are probably knowing a few Librans who are like that. And I need things to be fair and right. Otherwise, I lose it. So this game, he's giving all these decisions to his team, right? And I'm 11 years old, and I'm giving him a bit of jib, right? And at the end of the game, I'm walking off the pitch, and I can hear the teacher come up to my teacher, the referee, just come up to my teacher, and he's going, "You better keep an eye on that little number 7 there. He's bit lippy," like that, right? And me and my mate are walking off the pitch, and we could both hear him. Right? And I turned to my mate and I went, "He's talking out of his arse," right? And I said it a bit loud, so the teacher heard me. Right, so with that, I get frog marched with my teacher. He takes me back, drives me back to my house, and sits me down in front of my mum and tells my mum what I've just done. Right? And my mum would bless her. She took it in, and when the teacher went, she went, "Was he cheating?" I went, "Yeah, he was, Mum." She went, "You were right then." So I've tried teaching I've very much now, my 15-year-old daughter at school is obviously in a state school, and I'm having to have some. And I've done a pretty good job, I think, over the last few years. I've managed to drill into her that she does not automatically take the teacher's word for it. If there's something that she doesn't feel right, question it and question the teacher, because I think you've got to be able to do that. Yeah. And I was really proud of her. A few last year it was. She like when the head teacher walked into her classroom at the school that she's at, head teacher walks into the classroom, all the kids have to stand up automatically, right? As soon as the head teacher walks in, got to stand up like that. And and she came back one day, she went, "Dad," she said, "the head teacher walked into our class and everybody stood up." I said, "All right." I said, "What did you do?" She said, "Well, I didn't stand up." I said, "Okay, why didn't you stand up?" I said, "Because, the others are standing up for what reason?" And they went, "Well, because it's the head, and I don't know, they probably respect her, but I don't know her. I don't know her. I don't know if I can trust her. Why should I stand up when she comes in the room?" And I was like, "That I have done a good job at you, girl."
So now when people go to court and they're expected to stand up, though, but, "Well, Matt told me to stay sitting." But it's kind of like the bowing in football, in British football. I don't think it's everywhere, but I watched the odd football game to turn off, and now I see like flags that have nothing to do with the football teams there, and people bowing. They're getting on their knee. English footballers are getting on their knee all the time. Would you do that?
I'd like to think that, knowing what I know now, if I would have known what I know now, I wouldn't have taken the knee at a football match. I wouldn't have done. because I looked into the whole Black Lives Matter thing before it all kind of kicked off, and I didn't like what they stood for. I didn't agree with it, so I think I would have been one of those people. And there were a few players. They didn't really get highlighted very much because obviously they didn't want people knowing that Wilfred Zaha, who was black himself, wasn't taking the knee. There were other players that refused to do it, and I'd like to think that I would have been one of those players that didn't.
Well, you did it later on because you didn't wear the BLM badge, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true as well. That was another thing I upset Sky with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wore it once, we were going into the studio, we were just about to go on air, and the producer came into the studio and gave us these badges, and it was all just right after it kind of just all kicked off, and it was like all over the screens, and when he came in, bearing in mind it's like 2 minutes before we're going on air, he gave us these badges, and I looked at him and I went, do I have to wear that? And he looked at me and he went, it's probably in your best interest if you do. And I was like, wow, and I was a bit taken aback. So I was like, well, now we're just going on air. So I was like, right, I just put it. But I felt so uncomfortable the whole afternoon with it on. I just wasn't comfortable. And as soon as we came off air, I went to the producer and I took the badge off and I give him the badge back. I went, I'm sorry. I said, that's the last time I will ever wear that badge. I said, I don't agree with what you're doing. If you want me to wear any other badge, kick racism out, the all that stuff, I'm quite happy to do that. I'm not a racist, but I'm not wearing that badge ever again. And yeah, I was the first person at Sky to refuse to wear it, and eventually, none of them were wearing it. So, somebody's got to start the fashion, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. Cancel culture, you obviously have experience with this. Would you mind sharing some of your experience? What have you been cancelled from? Who tries to cancel you? What's going on with this culture?
Probably the worst one was I was due to speak at a dinner. So I've been doing after dinner speaking about my football career and my Sky career. I've been doing that for 20 years. And so I was booked to speak at the Jersey Bulls end of season dinner, right? Over in the other island. But they're all right with me over there. I've never slagged Jersey off too much. And they quite like me over there, apparently. So I was booked to do this dinner. And about a week before, I got a phone call from the guy organising it, and he went, "Matt, we're really sorry, but we're gonna have to cancel you." So I said, "Oh, why is that?" He said, "ITV in Jersey have got in touch with us, and they've told us that they're going to be sending a film crew to the evening, and they will be reporting on this event as a controversial event." I was like, all I do is talk about football and my career at Sky. I said, what's controversial about that? He went, I know. He said, but they're very adamant that they are going to be turning up and they will not be reporting positively on our end of season awards night. So we're going to have to cancel you. So I was like, all right, whatever. I said, fine, no problem. He said, we'll give you a cancellation fee. So I was like, no, don't worry about it. I said, it don't matter. I said, it's fine. I've got other work. It's fine. I said, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I would have appreciated it if you'd have been a bit stronger with them. But if that's your decision, no problem. So, and that was kind of how we left it. And he went, no. He said, I'll make sure you get a cancellation fee. So in the end, I actually got paid the entire fee. Didn't even have to do the job. What a bonus.
You should book loads of gigs. Like 3 on a night.
But I was just like, why have ITV Jersey? Why did they get to stick their oar in to something that had nothing to do with them and something that wasn't in any way controversial? Because in my after dinner speeches, I don't talk about all the stuff that's happened in the last 4 years, unless people specifically ask me to. But yeah, I don't know what got into them. So yeah, that was one of the events that I got cancelled from. There was another football club that had 2 people complain about me, so they cancelled an evening that sold out in 24 hours.
You've more than 2 people complaining in this place, by the way.
Yeah, So it's been an interesting experience. And then a couple of years ago, I might have posted something a little bit controversial about the war in Ukraine, and loads of people started writing into Southampton Football Club because I was the ambassador, one of the ambassadors for Southampton Football Club. A load of people started getting in touch with Southampton Football Club, going, "It's a disgrace. You shouldn't have him as your ambassador." And loads of people were like emailing in and phoning in, and the CEO was a mate of mine, and he was telling me this. He wasn't going to sack me. He said, "I just need to let you know." And I went, "Well, that's fine." I said, "I'm not bothered." I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll take the heat off you. I'll resign." Job done. They got nothing to complain about then. So I did. I resigned as the Southampton club ambassador off my own back, just so that the football club weren't getting any shit from the fans. And that's what I did. Now, what you'll see in the media, and a lot of people who have a go at me they go, "Yeah, even Southampton Football Club got rid of you because you were," and I was like, "That's not actually true, is it?" Because I resigned, actually. They weren't going to get rid of me, but I did the right thing, what I thought was the right thing at the time, because I didn't want the football club getting unnecessary aggravation that they didn't need at the time. So, we were fighting relegation. That's the last thing they needed.
Freedom of speech is getting hammered. Scotland, I think they've got some hate crime law. They're trying to bring it in here.
They're trying to bring it in all over the world, not just in these countries.
So why, I know it seems like an obvious and simple question, but why is the freedom of speech so important?
Freedom of speech is the most important issue in the world, bar none. It is, because without you being able to speak freely, governments will be able to get away with whatever the hell they want to. And that's why the first thing they're going for is your freedom of speech, because they need to censor the truth. Because if everybody knew the truth about what they were doing, they wouldn't be able to walk the streets.
But surely the governments have our best interest in heart. What are you trying to imply?
I actually had somebody on social media last week who actually said to me when I posted something that the government don't give a shit about you, basically, is what I posted. And I had one person who wrote back to me and went, "But what if you're wrong?" And I was like, "Right. Do you know anything about your history? Do you know anything about governments of the world? How many governments do you know have taken less money off you in tax since you've been alive? Come on then, seriously." All their job is we are basically tax slaves. We're tax slaves, and they will gradually, and it's the whole boiling the ethical frog thing, gradually the list of taxes that is imposed on people in this country is fucking ridiculous. If you actually sit down and look at the list, it is scary. And they've done it gradually over decades. And if you do it gradually, people don't notice it too much, and they can get away with it. And that's what they've done for years and years. But I think what I've witnessed over the last few years is there is now a awakening taking place among people. It might not be going as fast as we want it to, but there is an awakening taking place of people who now know the amount of corruption that goes on in governments and in institutions, and I think eventually, it's going to be a long battle, and I'm in it for the long run, don't worry about that. It's going to be a long battle, but the good people will win. There's way more good people on this planet than there is bad. I have no doubt about that whatsoever.
Like yes, Gary Lineker.
There is evil. There is evil on this planet. But it is in a massive minority, and we will win. No question about it. We will win.
Well. You're a massive anti-vaxxer, however.
Another one of those names.
You're a professional footballer, so you've travelled, which means you've probably had loads of vaccines. Is that so? But yet you're called an anti-vaxxer. Is that true? I'm guessing you have.
I don't remember. You got to remember, I played for Southampton. We never played in Europe, mate. Do you know what I mean? I don't remember getting actually many. I remember having some as a kid. I don't know how many, obviously, because I was only one. But I'm don't remember having too many as a professional. I took the flu vaccine when I was about 28. They used to offer it to us every year, and it was very casual. It was like, do you want one? And most of the time I go no, and then one year I had it. I don't know why. I just happened to be in the room, and I was ill for a week after I had it. Right, and I was like, that's a bit. What did I do that for? It was made me ill. So the next year it came around, I went, no, you're all right, mate. So I was about 28 when that happened, and I've never taken the flu vaccine again since I was 28 years old. And guess what? I've never had the fucking flu since I was 28.
Well, that means you haven't had COVID then, I presume.
No. I've been very healthy the last few years, actually. Yeah.
Some people say
the whole, I just want to address the whole anti-vaxxer thing, right? Because obviously I had vaccines as a kid, and I had that one 25 years ago when everyone, 27 years ago. And all because I wasn't prepared to have this one, because there were some massive red flags for me with this. So firstly, I knew how long it took to develop a vaccine, right? To monitor long-term safety issues and all that kind of stuff. So I knew that, and they developed this in what they said was a space of like 11 months or whatever it was. So that for me, first red flag. Second red flag, just before the vaccine rollout, and when I tell people this, a lot of people look at me like I'm mad, but they did. They changed the definition of the word vaccine to allow these vaccines to be called vaccines. Or gene therapies is what they actually are. And so I was like, oh, come on, hang on a minute. You're developing this in this time. You're now changing the definition of a word in the English dictionary so you can call it a vaccine so that the government can give you immunity. I smell a rat. And I wasn't prepared to take that risk. I wasn't. And so people started calling me an anti-vaxxer. And at first I was like, how can I be an anti-vaxxer? I had my vaccines as a kid. I had a vaccine when I was an adult. And why are you calling me an anti-vaxxer? And then after a while I was like, do you know what? I ain't taken another fucking vaccine in my life. I am an anti-vaxxer now. Fuck them.
Turns out they were right.
Absolutely. Yeah. But they weren't at the time, but I am now.
I told you that about my child. We had a home birth, and the HSE rings up, and I needed a PPS number or something, and they go, and if you had a home birth, can I ask, did you have the vaccines? And I responded, you hardly think we had a home birth and now we're going to vaccinate our child. And she just laughed and went, yeah, fair enough. So COVID was so deadly that you needed a test to know if you had it, but you could pass it on without any symptoms. Were at any stage you a little bit nervous about getting it or anything like that?
No. Not at any stage. I broke every COVID rule there was. I'm happy to admit it. In fact, come and arrest me retrospectively. Fuck off.
Well, you can. Dr. Anne McCluskey got in trouble there for not paying a fine. One of our great doctors here spoke out.
Yes, I saw that.
When you spoke out, did anybody let you down? Someone that you thought who might support you let you down?
Oh, fucking hundreds of them.
Yeah. And then likewise, did anybody support you that you were pleasantly surprised by?
I had a lot of private messages of support from people who were still employed in the media who wanted to keep their jobs. So, it was nice to have that little bit of support to know that I wasn't going mad and that I'm not the only one. But, it would have been nice if they would have come out publicly and done the same thing. But, I kind of semi-understand why. They were afraid, they got bills to pay. I had the same thing, and I had to find other ways of earning money to be able to keep me out. So I've still got a mortgage, but I will tell people, there are other ways. I've probably taken about a 50% hit in what I was earning before, but you find a way, and so it's not all bad to actually speak your mind. I would much prefer to be able to put my head on the pillow at night knowing that I did the right thing than suffer in silence knowing that I was a coward and take my paycheck.
I've always wanted to know, did anybody approach you to try and get you over to the dark side? You know, like, oh, don't say man, you get in trouble.
I often thought about that. And I remember sitting there one day thinking, what if somebody does? What if somebody... Yeah, I did. I played that game where I went, what if somebody offered me £1 million to shut my mouth? Like, shut my Twitter account down and give me £1 million and go off into the sunset, right? And I thought, I don't think there's enough money to do that. It just wasn't the right thing to do. And so no, nobody ever approached me, sadly. I think probably still got a mortgage, but nobody approached me. But I think the fact that because of what I was like at Southampton, and that I didn't join Tottenham and I didn't join Liverpool and I didn't join Chelsea when I could have earned probably 5 times as much money if I'd have gone to Chelsea at the time as what I was on at Southampton. I think most people realise that it's not about money with me. It's never been about money with me. It's about doing the right thing, and for my football career, it was about me being happy and my family being happy. That was the first consideration whenever any transfer was taking place.
You already said that you would do it again. You'd go back. You wouldn't do anything differently. But if there was someone here in a position and they were going to speak out, what would you advise them? Because I'm sure you've learned along that path.
Have a really, really thick skin, because you're going to need it. That would be the first thing. I also had to change the way that I was talking to people early on, and I sussed out quite early that people didn't actually like facts very much. I don't know if anyone experienced that, but facts were no good when you're dealing with people's emotions. So I worked that out quite early on, and I stopped kind of trying to tell people what was going on, and tried, instead of giving them facts and going, look, here's a fact, I'm right, and trying to convince them, I found there was a much more subtler approach that worked a bit better, and that was to not tell them facts, but it was to ask them really awkward questions. Like, so I'd ask them about, when all the mask nonsense came in, and you could wear it going into the restaurant, but you could take it off when you sat down. So all my mates who were wearing masks, I'm going, what happens when you sit down then? Where does the virus go? and that was a way more effective way of getting them to start thinking about what they're actually doing. So, and I think that's what people did. They actually stopped thinking for themselves. They outsourced their thinking to the square box in the middle of their lounge. And that is a really dangerous thing to do. So I think the best thing you can do to try and get people to come round is to get them to start thinking critically and start using their common sense, start listening to your gut. That was the big thing for me. You mentioned the spiritual thing before, but all my life I've been led by my gut, and my gut instinct will tell me to, and I did it on a football pitch. A lot of the stuff that I did on a football pitch, and this is absolutely true, there were some things that I did on a football pitch, and I had no idea how I did it.
I noticed that when I was watching your goals. A lot of the time, you don't even look at the goal. You're just on the ground, and then you kick it in.
There's a few clues on the pitch to tell you where you are. Do you know those lines on the pitch? When you know where those lines are, you kind of know where the goal is in that direction. So, not quite the same thing. But there were some times, there were actually times where I'd gone on like a dribble, and I'd gone past like 3 or 4 players, and I got the other side, and I shoot or I cross the ball in, and then I go, how did I do that? And I'd have to watch it on the telly that night to see what I'd done to get past those players. Because it was just, in the moment, it was just like, bang, bang, this is what I've got to do that. And it just happened so quickly, by instinct, and that was kind of how I played my football.
So trust your gut, not the telly.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
We won't see it on the telly, but AstraZeneca has been taken off the market in America, as far as I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong. online, people. I'm sure you will.
Not just America, is it?
Yeah, well, and there's a number of side effects that they've admitted now, like myocarditis and so on. So surely people must have softened to you, you know, watching people die and the excess deaths. Surely they're kind of like, oh, sorry about that, Matt. You were right all along. Sorry about it.
I've definitely had some people who thought I was mad in 2020, genuinely thought I was going crazy, who have now come and apologised to me, which, you know, fair play to them. That takes a lot of doing. I think if more people were able to swallow their pride, because, let's be honest, pride was originally a sin.
You could get cancelled for that in this month.
But just remember, pride comes before a fall. There was a massive change in the replies on my social media to the stuff I was posting about 2 years ago. All of a sudden, it kind of went from being like 95% negative replies and 5% agreeing with me to like 2 years ago when the players started collapsing on the pitch, and it was like, I just go, oh, blimey, there's another one. Now, here's the thing about the vaccines and the players collapsing on the pitch. I've never once said that the players that are collapsing on the pitch is definitely because of the vaccines. I've never once said that. You can't find me saying that anywhere. All I've done is I've called for an investigation because this is not normal. This didn't happen in my time as a professional footballer. I played 17 years as a professional footballer. I never saw one person in training or in matches, and I probably played, given friendly matches and everything, I probably played 800 matches. Never once did I see a player collapse with a heart issue in all those 17 years. Now, I know it has happened occasionally because there were some high-profile incidents with Fabrice Muamba, with Marc Vivien Foé. I know all about that. That was after both those were after I retired. But the reason we remember those is because they were so infrequent. And then it started happening at a rate that was just not normal. And I could see it, and I couldn't believe that authorities, unions, the Football Association, the Premier League, the Professional Football Association, FIFA, UEFA, they must all be seeing the same thing I'm seeing. And they didn't bat an eyelid, didn't care one bit. The PFA, who are the Professional Footballers Union in this country, did not give a stuff that their players were collapsing on the pitch at a rate not seen before. And it was a massive dereliction of duty by the Professional Football Association, by the FA. And I actually got together with Dr. Asim Malhotra, Dr. Claire Craig, and we put together a letter to send to the PFA about what was going on the pitches. And I got that letter co-signed, and I contacted about 100 ex-players that were in my phone book, that were kind of acquaintances, not all mates, but acquaintances of mine that I just had their numbers. And I texted them all, about 100 of them. And only 2 players texted me back to say they didn't want to co-sign it. 98 of them had seen what I was seeing, and they were happy to sign the letter with me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to go the other way.
I was amazed as well.
Wow. Who are those 2 pricks?
I don't want to dob them in, but I'll tell you later. One of them was still an ambassador at a Premier League football club, which is one of the reasons why I think he didn't want to put his job in jeopardy.
If the footballers dropping dead or dropping from the pitch, it's kind of fascinating because a report, you did a tweet around it recently. It was someone else's tweet, you shared it, and it was basically a peer-reviewed study that went out that was ignored by Lancet, and 365, I think, were in it, and 240 of those people were directly dead because of the vaccine. So that's 69.3%, something like that.
You've got a better memory than me.
Trust the science. That's a real science thing that's out there. So,
but those kind of studies will get ignored, and they will probably get cancelled. They'll get retracted at some point because somebody's not very happy about that stuff. And those medical journals and all that stuff now, I have zero confidence in those journals. They're corrupted just as much as our politicians are corrupted, just as much as the pharmaceutical industry. That whole industry is shot to pieces. There's so many institutions that I used to have a bit of trust in that I have lost all respect for over the last few years. And the police force is one of them. The two-tier policing that we saw at the protests, any freedom protest, they were going in on the crowd in London, all that stuff, disgusting. So I lost a lot of respect for the police, lost a lot of respect for doctors, and I lost a lot of respect for the NHS. I left MPs out because I had no respect for them in the first place.
I'm trying to find out why the sports people were dying much more than usual since 2022, and it turns out it's actually because football's more taxing nowadays. There's a lot more games. So climate change, yeah, good. So I think what they're trying to say is you, in comparison to modern day footballers, were a bit of a lazy bunch of footballers. What's your response to that, Matthew?
Well, let me tell you this. I didn't know this. This was pointed out to me by a journalist friend of mine down at Southampton. Back in 1992-93 season, I think it was. No, 91-92 season. Towards the back end of the season, we had a bit of a fixture backlog. We had a few games cancelled. And we had to play Saturday. We then played another game on the Tuesday. We then played another game on the Thursday. And then we played again on the Saturday. Right? 4 games in 7-8 days. 7 players, I looked it up. After he told me this, I looked it up. 7 players out of those 11 started all 4 of those games. And I was one of them. So all those people that went, oh, Matt LeTissier, he wasn't very fit. Fuck off. I played 4 games in 8 days, mate. You try telling that to Harry Kane, see what he says. You watch the current day footballers go crying because they couldn't possibly play 4 games in 8 days. And so absolute bullshit. The workload and all that nonsense, rubbish. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many games you play. You can play more games, but what that means is you do less training. So that's the equation that people never take into consideration. So that week that we played Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we barely trained. We didn't do any training at all. In between the games, all we did was rest, ready for the next game. So when you actually look at it, if you play more games, you just train less. Your workload doesn't change. You're still doing the same amount of work. It's just that you're either training or you're playing football matches. So that excuse, absolute bullshit.
Well, if it's not that, it must have been the climate change.
It has to be the climate change. It has to be.
Peter Beardsley got taken back there. He disappeared. He said a comment. He probably shouldn't have said it. It was a bit inappropriate. But lately, the lads have accepted him back. Isn't it funny how you can be cancelled and then just like that, you're uncancelled?
I have no idea how you get uncancelled. But, I mean, it does happen. So when I said I resigned as ambassador at Southampton, I resigned as club ambassador, but also I was an ambassador for the Saints Foundation, which was the charity arm of the football club. And they basically cancelled me and went, you're not doing anything anymore with the Saints Foundation, right? And then last year, the guy who heads the Saints Foundation, he asked for a meeting with me because we were in the Championship now, right? So when you have a foundation, the charity arm of your football club, when you're in the Premier League, you get a shitload of money, right, for the foundation. When you drop down to the Championship, there's a whole massive chunk of money that goes missing, right? You don't get it because you're not in the Premier League anymore. So the foundation then have to work a lot harder to raise the money that they need to go through the year. So start of the Championship season, the bloke from the Saints Foundation asked me for a meeting. Now, I know about the funding for the Saints Foundation. I know that they're going to be desperate to try to get some more funding. And I knew what they were doing, so he got a meeting with me and he said, Max, he said, we're really sorry about, what happened a couple of years ago. Really sorry. Would you mind coming back as an ambassador? And I went, all right. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll come back as an ambassador. I said, you just need to do one thing for me. He said, oh, what's that? I went, you need to make a public apology about the way you treated me 2 years ago. And he went, I'll have to think about that. So he did. He went away and he thought about it. And 2 days later, I got a text saying, "Sorry, Matt, we can't do that." I went, "Your loss, fair enough," and walked away. And that was it.
Well, Trevor Sinclair got himself sort of in trouble, didn't he? Because he mentioned that with the John Fleck thing. He was on telly and he said, "Someone has."
He was on the radio.
It was on the radio.
Yeah.
And he just got cut off, just like that.
Got his mic cut live on air because he questioned. He wanted to know the vaccination status of the bloke that had heart issues on the football pitch, and it was dead air. Yeah, they dead aired him straight away. Mic cut. They then tried to sack him. They tried to get rid of him. He got lawyers involved. He won the case.
Good.
And got his job back, although not quite doing as much as he was doing. But yeah, it was disgusting. Simon Jordan actually was asking the question as well. Simon Jordan was kind of on Trevor's side in that debate, and he got shut down as well. It's amazing that you can't have a debate about it. Like we were talking earlier on about, when you guys over here, we didn't quite go down as far down the route of the COVID passes as you guys did. I mean, you had to happen to get into restaurants. Is that right? Yeah. So now a footballer collapses on a football pitch with a heart issue, and you're not allowed to go, "Could it be the vaccine?" Right? Is he vaccinated? People go, "Oh, you can't ask that. That's his private medical information. You can't ask that." "Oh, but it was all right to get in a fucking restaurant 2 years ago, wasn't it? You're allowed to ask it then." Honestly, the world's gone fucking mad. Excuse my language, ladies, I'm sorry, but sometimes I get frustrated.
Politics, hijacking football. Every time I turn on football, there's something going on. Is this going to stay? Or
Well, it'll stay as long as there's weak leaders in positions of power at the FA, the Premier League, and all that stuff, because you need strong people to be able to go to the Prime Minister of this country and go, "Do you know what, mate? Take a hike." And it's only because politics is so fucking boring that nobody was interested, so they have to try to get people's interest, and the biggest way they could do that is to take the national sport and throw their agendas into the national sport, so we all start taking notice of it, and they try to brainwash you that way. And that's the only reason that they do it, because they're not engaging enough, they're not popular enough themselves to actually engage the populace in politics. So they have to try to hijack something that is popular, and basically I think they fucked it up. I think they've gone a step too far, and I think people are waking up to what the trick is, what they're doing, and politics needs to get the hell out of sport, because I love sport. It's been my life, my playing life, but like shit on the television, I just watch sport. I love it, but there are some sports that I can't watch now because they've been hijacked so badly. You know, I went to the point of whenever there was a Premier League game, like going on a couple of years ago, I deliberately would miss the first couple of minutes because I didn't want to see people taking the knee. So I just thought, fuck it, I'm not going to watch the first. And I didn't. I just kind of, and I thought, just keep out of sport. It doesn't need you. Sport's great. Don't fuck it up. Simple as that.
I'm the same. I always skip the start for that reason if I'm watching a game. And you've been talking about CBD oil. Tell us a little bit about that. What's going on? Why this brand, and why is it for your health? Have you been taking it? What are the good?
Yeah, I've been taking, and Anthony Fowler contacted me a couple of years ago at Supreme CBD, and he was like, "Matt," he said, "I've got this product," and I was like, "I don't know about it, mate. I don't." I said, "It's not for me." I said, "I don't know enough about it. I'm okay. I'm all right. I don't need that." So I left it, and then about 6 months later, he contacted me again, and he said, "Matt," he said, "this honestly," he said, "just give it a try." So I said, "I'll tell you what," I said, "I'll give it a go for a couple of months. If I notice a difference, my family notice a difference, we'll have a conversation." I said, "But I'm not endorsing anything until I've seen that it works." So he gave me a load of gummies and a load of oil. I was taking the gummies. My wife was taking the oil. She had osteoarthritis in her fingers, quite bad. And within a few days of taking this oil, she noticed a massive difference in her fingers. And I was like, okay. And I found I was sleeping a lot better. I would normally kind of have 1 or 2 times a night where I'd kind of wake up and all of a sudden I'm like sleeping 7, 8 hours straight through. I was like, okay, must be something in this. I tried it with other family members, and they all gave it the thumbs up. They were like seeing a real difference. So I was like, fair play to you. It obviously does do something. And the reviews that I've got, the people that are sending me messages when they've tried it, saying how much it's helped them with their anxiety and all this kind of stuff. I've been blown away by the response. And so yeah, that's why I endorse it. It's the only thing I've ever really endorsed on my Twitter since I started in 2009, I think it was. All the big pharma shills don't like it. They can't make money out of it, can they? It's a natural product. This is the favourite one. How can you promote that stuff, but you won't take a vaccine? You don't know what the long-term effects are of this stuff.
You don't know what's in there.
Do you have any idea how long cannabis has been around? And honestly, it was just like blown away. But it's not, obviously it's not the cannabis, but it's just a little bit of the plant that is the good stuff, not the stuff that makes you go a bit woo.
This is your half. This is all about you. So if you haven't got questions, I'm going to be talking about the Holocaust or something like that.
Matt, can I ask you, how come thousands of Ukrainians, players and supporters, are more upset about losing their match the other night than the war that's supposedly going on in their country?
It's a good question. One that I don't really know the answer to. Yeah, it's a little bit bizarre, isn't it? The things that are important to people, it's just incredible. People's priorities lie in some very strange places in this day and age. That's all I can say. But thank you for your question.
What the hell was going on with the PFA and the Premiership? Why did they imply that the players must be vaccinated when clearly they couldn't be legally? But surely they must have known, and why did the players go along with it? They've got a lot of money invested in nutrients and health, so surely they should know better.
I don't know if you can remember, but there were some reports in the papers about the percentage of Premier League footballers that were vaccinated. Does anybody remember seeing that? So do you remember what the number was? So in England, in the UK anyway, it was reported that about 95% of all Premier League footballers were vaccinated. Right, that's what we were told. So I played golf about 2 years ago with 2 current Premier League footballers who played for 2 different football clubs. And on the way round, the subject of vaccinations came up, and I asked them, how many of your squad were vaccinated? And both of them, who played at 2 separate clubs, both of them said to me it was about 50-50. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's not what we were being told. So there is obviously a much bigger amount of professional footballers that care about what goes into their bodies. Because at the end of the day, these were experimental. They didn't go through all the trials that they're meant to go through. And it seems that quite a large number of footballers didn't fall for it. Now, I do know that which is something that I can't really get my head around, and it's part of your question. I also spoke to members of staff at at a football club who told me that the doctors and the physios were heavily coercing those players to get vaccinated. Now, that for me is just mind-blowing. These clubs have got assets that are worth millions and millions of pounds, and yet their doctors and their physios are encouraging them to have an experimental gene therapy pumped into their body. I'm pretty sure that if any of those players had problems because of the vaccine, and there has been some, I think their insurance would actually have a really good claim to go, we ain't paying it. We're not paying it. You've taken an experimental, and we're not paying it. And that, for me, is one of the most mind-boggling things, that those medical people at that football club actually were coercing those players, which, by the way, is illegal. Coercion is illegal. And yet they were doing that to players who are worth millions of pounds to these football clubs. I don't get it. And I completely understand why you asked that question. But there was definitely not the amount of players that they told us were actually vaccinated. When all the clubs fly off to different parts of the country for their pre-season tours, if you looked very closely at the players that went on those tours, some of those players weren't allowed to go on those tours because the countries they were going to had to have you vaccinated to let you into the country. So you could work out which players weren't vaccinated because they told you that they were staying at home because they got a little injury. Got a little injury, so they can't go to Australia.
I thought you were going to say you could tell which players because it was the ones that didn't fall down.
Obviously, that would have been a funny answer, but you're the comedian, not me.
Ireland really needs a coach, and we're wondering if you could ring up the FAI and put yourself forward.
Unfortunately, I couldn't be considered for any managerial job because I don't have any coaching badges. My 17 years of playing professional football means nothing because I obviously know nothing until I've taken a badge that the FA have deemed that I need, that I have to pay thousands of pounds to get just to be able to apply for a job. And again, that's another piece of nonsense that I couldn't go along with. So back in 2005, Southampton was sat halfway down the Championship, approaching Christmas 2005, and they sacked Harry Redknapp, right? And at that point, bearing in mind we just spent however many years in the top flight, we'd got relegated. We were just bottom half of the Championship, and I thought it can't get any worse. And so me and Franny Benali applied for we didn't apply. We said to the chairman, we'd be prepared to have a go. Now Clive Woodward was at the club at this point. I don't know if you remember that experiment we had where Clive Woodward, great rugby coach, had come into the football club, and obviously him and Harry didn't get on very well, which is probably why Harry left. So me and Franny Benali said, we'll have a go at being joint managers. Because, we loved the club. We just felt like we could do something to bring the club back to where we thought it belonged, because we didn't think it could get any worse. Little did we know. We were in League One a couple of seasons later, so it did get worse. But the chairman was Rupert Lowe at the time, and because me and Franny didn't have any badges, we had a meeting with Clive Woodward, which we thought we could go in to Clive first, have a meeting with him, and we came out of that meeting, and me and Franny both went, he doesn't want us to be managers, he wants to be the manager, and he wants us as his two coaches. So we were like, no, not having that. I'm not answering to a rugby bloke. Sorry. And then Rupert Lowe, anyway, said that they haven't got any coaching badges, so we can't consider them. I was like, okay. If this ever happens again, I might want to be better prepared. So I applied for my level 2 coaching badge, and I started it in the January of 2006. And I got about halfway through level 2 before I found myself on a freezing night in Southampton with a school teacher teaching me how to pass a ball 10 yards across this square. Honestly, it was as basic as that. And I had this moment in that, and I was freezing. My fingers are frozen, and my feet are like blocks of ice. And I stood there and I thought, what the fuck am I doing here? And I walked out and I went, I ain't doing that anymore. I can't do it. Because I wasn't that interested in being a manager, to be honest. Because, I was like, I don't know what was I at the time, 37, 38 years of age. And I'd never had a full-time job. And a football manager is a proper 24/7 full-time job. And I'd got to that age and I thought, fuck it, I don't want one of them. I'm just going to go in the media and play golf for the rest of the week. Much easier life, less stress, and I'm much healthier because of it. There you go. So, yeah, I can't be manager, sorry.
What about wearing a poppy? Is that politics and sport? Would you wear a poppy? What are your thoughts?
This actually goes back to one of the questions that you asked me earlier on, which I'd forgotten about when you asked me what I'd been cancelled from. Right, so I did the remembrance service in the Southampton Guildhall on Remembrance Day for the previous 3 years. It's like 3 years ago, 6 years ago. So I'd done 3 years in a row where I'd done the remembrance service, and the fallen
soldiers
in the war. Yeah.
who
so I'd done the remembrance service for them, like obviously free of charge, nothing. I don't and in 2000 and I don't know if I can't remember if it's 21 or 22 now, but I was due to do it again for them, but because of my views on social media, they cancelled me from doing that, even though I'd given them my time and for the last 3 years. And it wasn't just like, it was like a bit of work that goes into it. I had a lot of work to do and speaking and stuff, and and they just went, no, because of your views. And I thought, well, this is interesting, isn't it? They're celebrating all those blokes that have gone to war to fight for our freedom of speech, and they're cancelling me because of my freedom of speech. I thought, what a juxtaposition that is. So I would have done years ago. I would never buy another Poppy. I won't, because of the way that they treated me. I thought it was bang out of order, and they were complete hypocrites, if you ask me, cancelling me for my views when the people that they're celebrating, remembering, are the guys that fought for what we have today. So yeah, I probably wouldn't now, but there you go.
You played your whole career for Southampton. You've sacrificed possibly trophies and so on from if you decided to go with another club. But looking back, what was one of the best matches or the best match that you enjoyed most?
There were a few matches that kind of stand out for Southampton. We had 3 years in a row where we beat Man United at home, so that was quite special. One of those games was 6-3. There was another game where they changed their shirts at half time because they couldn't see each other, apparently. We were 3-0 up at half time, and that was the excuse that Sir Alex Ferguson used for losing 3-1 in the end in that game. Then we went 6-3 the next season. Egelos and Sad got a hat-trick. Al Berkovic got a couple of goals, and I chipped Peter Schmeichel. And then the year after that, we beat 1-0, Kevin Davis header. So those 3 years were pretty special, but there was one game really way before that, and you got to be quite old to remember this now. In 1989, in October, back end of October 1989, we played Liverpool at the Dell, and this was obviously in that era. Liverpool were unbelievable. So they had John Barnes, Ian Rush, Peter Beard, like fantastic team they had. They were the best team in the country at the time. They came to the Dell in the end of October. Now, bear in mind, the season started in August. They were unbeaten for the season, right? They came down to the Dell, and we played pretty much almost a 4-2-4 formation against them, which was like unheard of in those days, really. So we played with me and Rodney Wallace on the wings, Paul Rideout and Alan Shearer were playing up front, and we had Jimmy Case and Glenn Cockrell in midfield. And honestly, every single player that day had an unbelievable game. Everyone played to their potential that day, and that very rarely happened. And we smashed them 4-1, and honestly, if it was 7 or 8-1, they wouldn't have had any complaints. Like, we at the woodwork a couple of times, we were all over them, and they were the best team in the country, and we absolutely smashed them. And that was the best game that I remember being involved in against a team that were the best team in the league at the time, and we just absolutely annihilated them. So yeah, it would be that one.
How can we stop anything like this ever happening again?
Our only hope is that the people that have woken up to the bullshit that's gone on, is that those same people, when it happens again and they try again, they actually have the balls to actually go, no, I will not comply this time, because you pulled the wool over our eyes last time. This will not happen again. And this wouldn't have happened if enough people had just said that little word that means so much. No. It's that simple. And the thing about that is, and the thing I've had a few times from people is when I say that to them, they go, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. Yes, that's true. You are one person, and you can do a little bit. If every person does their little bit, that's a hell of a lot, and it makes a difference. So that's what I would say. Say no, do not comply.
I ran away to Amsterdam during it, and I came back. And
Why did you choose Amsterdam?
Because there was no rules there. There's no regulations.
Oh.
Yeah, I had friends there.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, when I came back, I was like, everybody was all masked up and the restrictions here, and everybody was going along with it. And Stephen was like, nah, they don't apply. and he took me into all the shops. And we just went into the shops, into Super Value, didn't want to buy anything. Just picked up stuff, started talking to people, and everybody with the masks on. He goes, "Oh, steaks? Nah, I don't want the steaks." Putting them back, and nobody said anything. We just went to every shop, onto the Lewis. Didn't even buy tickets, as far as I remember. and then it was like, oh, it just clicked. Yeah, they don't actually apply. They only apply in here.
They do.
Yeah. Anyway,
they do.
Enough about
Do
me.
not be
Questions?
afraid. Do not let them use fear against you. It's the only ammunition they've got.
I haven't read the full Bible, but apparently the most popular phrase is "Do not be
Do
afraid."
not be afraid.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
What was your favourite venue to play at, and what was the hardest defence you played against? Correct.
It's the only answer in this room. I think in terms of the ground, there were a couple. So as a kid growing up, I dreamed of playing at Wembley. I went for a tour around Wembley when I was a kid, when I was about 11, and they did the whole, like, you go around all the stadium and you see all the bits, and then the last bit of the tour is they take you into the home changing room, and then they walk you up the tunnel. And as you get to the top of the tunnel, they didn't tell you, but as you got to the top of the tunnel, obviously the stadium was empty, but they played the noise of the crowd over the tannoys. And honestly, I still remember it now, being at 11 years of age, and this noise, and I just remember the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and it was like, oh my God. And I was like, I've got to do that for real. I need to do that for real. And in 1992, we got to the final of the Zenith Data Systems Cup. And I managed to do it for real for the first time then, and obviously did it a few times for England after that. So Wembley as a kid was my ultimate stadium to want to play in. If you're talking about league grounds, there were two. Now, I was a Spurs fan as a kid, so White Hart Lane was obviously a pretty special one for me. And I scored a load of goals there as well, which was quite nice. But really, I think the one really, really special place, which me as a kid growing up in the 70s, you didn't see a lot of football on the telly, but what you did see was a lot of European nights at Anfield. And so standing on the pitch at 5-3 on a Saturday afternoon and seeing the Cop with all their scarves up singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," that was a spine-chilling moment for me. And so Anfield, and also they had a brilliant pitch. It was like a carpet up there most of the time we played there. So Anfield would have been the one.
Can I add to that question and ask, of all the spectacular goals that you've scored, what's your favourite one, the one you enjoyed most?
That's probably different from my best goal. So I think my best goal I scored was against Blackburn in 94-95. That won the goal of the season.
Tim Flowers.
So against my old mate Tim Flowers, yes, that was pretty special. Scoring against one of my old teammates, who told me that I'd never score past him when he left Southampton. So I consulted him out. The goal that probably gave me the most pleasure was my last ever goal for Southampton. So we played at the end of the 2001 season. We were leaving the Dell to move to our new stadium at St Mary's, and our last ever league game at the Dell was against Arsenal. And on the Tuesday before the game, now I'd been injured for a lot of that season, right? And I hadn't had a good season. I'd only scored one goal in the League Cup that whole season, right? I hadn't scored a Premier League goal. And on the Tuesday before the game, the manager at the time, Stuart Gray, came to me on the Tuesday, and he said, "Matt," he said, "I know you're not fit." No shit, Sherlock. He said, "I know you're not fit." He said, "But we're not in any danger." He said, "On Saturday," he said, "I'm going to have you on the subs bench, and I promise you, when the final whistle blows for the last time at the Dell, you will be on the pitch because of what you've done for this club for the last 15 years. He said, you will be on the pitch, I will promise you that." So that was on the Tuesday, and I swear to God, every waking moment and every night I went to bed, right, and my girlfriend at the time must have been delighted, because all I could think about was how I was going to score the last goal at the Dell, right? That was just, I was obsessed. I felt like it was like my destiny to be the last person to score a goal at that stadium, right? And that's all I could think of. So I'm going to bed at night, and I'm laying there, and I'm going, well, what if the ball comes in? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And so we get to the Saturday, I'll get put on as a sub with about 12 minutes to go. We're drawing 2-2. I don't have any chances. And then in the 88th minute, the ball dropped in the penalty box, and it was a little bit behind me on the half volley with my left foot, and I've swiveled and I've hit this left foot half volley, and it was an unbelievable feeling.
Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white?
So I hit this ball so sweetly that when it left my foot, I knew that the goalkeeper can't stop it. I knew where it was going. It was heading right for the top corner. And if you actually watch the goal you can see it on YouTube. If you watch it, I start celebrating the goal before it's even hit the back of the net, because I know it's going in. Honestly, just amazing. So as I said, the best bit about that was, right, that was the 88th minute, right? So I've scored this goal. The noise that the stadium made when that goal went in was just incredible. I can still hear it now if I close my eyes. It was amazing. But it was in the 88th minute, so still a bit of time to go, right? And our centre midfielder, Chris Marsden, we have another attack. He hits a shot from the edge of the box, right? And it's going in the goal. And the keeper, Alex Manninger was the Arsenal goalie at the time, he tips it over the crossbar. Right, it was a brilliant save. And I can remember, because I was stood on the right-hand side, the corner's over on the left-hand side. And I remember jogging across the 18-yard box to go and take the corner. And I wanted to cuddle the goalie. I just wanted to go, well done, mate, great save. So
You should have.
So honestly, I'm not a selfish bloke, right? I'm not, I promise you. But this is God's honest truth. I've gone across to take the corner, right? Now, I was quite good at taking corners. Right? I could whip it in and put it in a really dangerous area, and a lot of goals were scored at Southampton from centre-backs scoring from my corners, right? So I stood at the corner. Now, we're in the 91st minute or something. There's no massive injury time in those days. And I put my foot on the ball, and I took a couple of steps back, and I suddenly thought, fuck, if I cross this in, someone might head this in. So I stood there and I was like, and Wayne Bridge was playing left back for us, right? He was right on the halfway line, defending. So I've looked up at him and he catches my eye and I've gone like that, right? So Wayne Bridge runs all the way from the halfway line, comes right down by me, and I just roll the ball back to him, right? And as I do that, the referee blows the final whistle. Didn't have time to cross it or anything, so I was the last person to score the last ever goal at the Dell. And it turned out to be my last ever goal for Southampton, because I was shit the next season.
In 1998, for the qualifiers, the starting 11 was announced and everybody was told, do not tell anyone, but you told your brother. Isn't that true? And do you think Glenn Hoddle possibly held that against you and didn't play you afterwards because of it?
Partially true, as is normal with what gets reported in the media. Some of it might be a little bit true. So the team, we did know the team the day before. I didn't tell my brother the team, firstly. So what had happened was the team was actually on the back page of one of the red top newspapers in our country. The team was printed in the paper that morning. So somebody had leaked the team to a journalist, right? The journalist prints the team that morning. The journalist then goes to Guernsey, where my brother works, went to my brother's work, showed him the newspaper with the team on the back of it, and he said to him, Carl, isn't it great that Matt's playing tonight? And my brother, not being media savvy, said, oh yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. You know, he's up front with Alan Shearer. It's great, right? So and then so it then goes. Oh, Carl LeTissier has told everyone that Matt's playing, but the team was on the back page of the newspaper. One of the players who wasn't selected in the first 11 and was a bit annoyed had leaked the team to a journalist the night before. Well, I can't name any names, but it was Steve McManaman. Allegedly. Allegedly.
Stephen
so
McManaman.
So that was the actual story. My brother got absolute dog's abuse for that, and it was not his fault at all. It was disgusting what that journalist did to him. So that Italy game, we ended up losing 1-0. which didn't help the cause. He substituted me after about 55, 60 minutes, I think it was. But he actually he substituted me, but then went on television on the following weekend and actually said that I'd actually played all right, and it might not have been a great decision to substitute me, right? Which is fair play. But then he never picked me again until we had an England B game the following year, a couple of months before the squad was announced. And it was kind of billed as a last chance to impress the manager. And so we played Russia B at Loftus Road. And I played in that game alongside a couple of other players, and I scored a hat-trick. And we won the game 4-1, I think it was. I also hit the crossbar and hit the post that day as well. It was one of the best 90-minute performances of my life, I'll be honest. And there weren't too many for them over the entire course of the game. I tended to drift in and out of the game a little bit. But that game, it was one of the best games I played.
Last night there was a pact where Ireland gave their sovereignty away with the EU Migration Pact. Have you any thoughts on that, Matt?
I believe all of this stuff is connected to the bigger agenda that's going on in the world. I don't see any other reason why we have men of fighting age coming into this country claiming to be, immigrants and displaced people. I'd like to ask the question, why are these men leaving their wives and children back at home? Where are they? Where are the women and children? If this is genuine, why are there not families coming here? It's a simple question, but again, it's what's happened in the world over the last 4 years. Even by asking questions, you get labelled a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist just for asking questions. Now, the fact that we're not allowed to ask questions about it and not allowed to tells me everything I need to know about what's going on. This isn't good for our countries.
You're very vocal about footballers falling down. Did you do any research and get some data pre-COVID to see what was going on so it could be compared?
There have been some studies done by some people that I knew that kind of backed up the amount of people wasn't normal. Now, there's also been some studies done that people who have, on the other side of the argument, have done their own studies to try to back up their side of the argument to say, no, it's always happened and it's always been this many people. So it boils down to who you trust and who you believe when it comes to the data, because data can be very easily manipulated, as we've seen a lot over the last few years. So I tend to want to believe my own eyes as opposed to studies and my own life experience, and I put more emphasis on my own life experiences and what I know that I've seen with my own eyes, and I put more behind that than I would put behind any peer-reviewed studies, because I think that industry, as we spoke about before, is very easily corruptible. I know from my experience what I saw in my career, and I know what I've been seeing the last few years isn't normal. I know who the CEO of FIFPro was, which was the Worldwide Players Union, and he's now left his role, strangely enough. But I actually asked him for the details of the medical officer that they had at FIFPro, because they had a doctor who was aligned with FIFPro, and he gave me the details of this doctor, and I emailed him and I asked him for the stats that they've collated over the years, pre-COVID and since COVID. Now, bearing in mind the position that he's in, you think he'd have a fair idea of what those stats are. The reply I got back from him on an email was, sorry, we don't have that information. And again, that tells me all I need to know. Because if he had that information and it backed up their side of the argument, he couldn't wait to put it in an email to me, and he couldn't do it. So that's all I've got to say on that subject.
Wow, he knows and still doesn't act upon it. That's rough karma. The tide is turning. More and more people are waking up to what's going on, but how do we get them, without saying I told you so, how do we get them to just cop the fuck on, like? Yeah. It's
a very tricky equation, because obviously it is easier to fool someone than to convince them that they've been fooled. And that's exactly what the gentleman's on about. As I alluded to in the first half, you can't do it by giving people facts. You have to be a bit more subtle about it, and you have to ask. I think you ask pertinent questions, and get them to come to the conclusion themselves. Because if they do that, there's much more chance that they will then take that information on board because they've done it themselves and they've seen it, rather than just trusting that you see it. And show empathy towards people. And I know it's really hard because you just want to go, are you fucking blind? Have you not just seen what's gone on the last few years? And it's really hard to show empathy towards people and to show compassion. But I think that is the way we have to go. We have to show compassion, we have to show empathy to people, but we have to ask them pertinent questions which get them to think themselves and not to just throw facts at them. Because as I said, facts just don't gain any traction against their emotions. So empathy, compassion, ask some tricky questions.
As a friend of mine, a great storyteller and director, he was telling me, you're too preachy, you're going on about this stuff and you're pushing people away. And he said, in order to connect with them, what is going on up there? What are you at? What are you at? So we have someone from Visor here at the moment, and they're not happy. And would you just read the Irish Times and do whatever it says on the top? And that's the Irish crimes. And anyway, he said to connect with people, you've got to do it through the heart. So I remember telling a story, but I told the story about my grandmother, because you have to love her, because she was one of these beautiful souls. I remember telling the story through her to get people to hear, which is fucking stop wearing those fucking masks, which is, but behind all that, you trick them into getting into the heart space. It's manipulation at its highest.
Good advice, yeah, absolutely.
What is your vision for the future? How do you see this going? This great battle between good and evil. Have we even a tiny sliver chance to win?
Oh, we've got way more than a slither of a chance. Way more. As I said, there's way more good people on this planet, and the more people that wake up to the divisive tactics, because that's kind of the biggest thing on the planet today, is how they use the divide and conquer tactics. Because if we all come together, they have no chance. They have no chance. There's so many of us against the evil few. There's a really small percentage who are really evil, and then you've got a bracket underneath that who just, they go along with it because they don't want to ruin their lives and they've got their possessions and all that kind of stuff. But there's a massive chunk of us who, if we all come together, we have so much power, and it's just getting people to realise just how much power they have when they can just say no, when they can just stand up to people in authority and go, that doesn't make sense, I'm not doing it. And when you do that, we can sort something out. You have to sort out the political system because I think the two-party system at the moment, the illusion of democracy that we've got at the moment is absolute nonsense. The Houses of Parliament need to go, in my opinion. There needs to be a better system brought in to make sure that the people that are in power actually work in the interests of the people that vote them into power. Because at the moment, they don't. They work in the interests of the people above them who control them, and they don't work for us. We shouldn't be paying so much tax. How did we get into so much debt? And how, if we were in so much debt, how could they just print loads of money for the furlough, the bribery scheme? If they can print that money, why are we paying tax? If you can print money whenever you want to, why the hell should we be paying tax? It makes no sense. So as yeah, exactly. And we have the power to be able to do that, as long as we come together and we don't fall for the divide and conquer tactics.
I think that's as good a place to end as any, guys. Matt, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Aidan. Cheers.
Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your strength and your integrity.
Thank you.
Bye.